I'm led to believe that this is one of the favourite songs of our next guest. He's the head of Queensberry Promotions, the wonderful Frank Warren joins us. Frank, good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon, chaps. How are you?
All good.
One of my favourites.
You like that? We've got that especially for you. See what we do to make people welcome on the show?
I'll tell you what, you've brightened up my evening.
Oh, how nice is that? Well, you've brightened up ours by coming on the show. We've got lots to talk to you about. We'll talk Arsenal, actually, a bit later on. But let's start, of course, with the world of boxing. We know that the WBA have ordered Alexander Usyk to fight Daniel Dubois. Is this? I mean, obviously it's a risk for Daniel Dubois. What's the latest on this, firstly, Frank?
Well, they've ordered it, but a unification will come first. And that's what we're working on, which is obviously the fight with Tyson and Usyk. So if the winner of that will have to fight our man, Daniel. Well, obviously Tyson's our man. We have to fight Daniel.
So how does that work? If a governing body order a fight, you can decide when that fight happens, but it might not if, for argument's sake, Usyk loses.
All the governing bodies will basically go for a unification fight. And it'll be the first time, I'm thinking, was it 25 years, whatever it is, that we've had a unification of all the belts in the heavyweight division. So that'll take priority. But what they're saying afterwards, all the fighters who've been, including Joyce, all these guys are either number one or they're interim champions, or in Daniel's case, they're heavyweight champions. They then will have to make their mandatory defences because they've been sitting around waiting for ages for these fights. And they will order those. So those fights will get ordered. So once the unification fights happen, then obviously they've got to start. The winners got to start taking care of the mandatories or vacating the particular title. That'd be their choice. If we can't get these Usyk fight on, which I doubt very much, because I think we will get it on, then obviously Usyk will have to defend his title against Daniel. But I don't think that's going to be a problem with Tyson.
Frank, you said there about he's going to have to fight Daniel, but also we know that the IBF ordered Usyk to fight Filip Hrgović as well. So, I mean, it's all very complicated.
Well, it's not really, because this will take priority over the IBF, because if you, when you look back at what's happened over the last few years, with the mandatory defences, all the organisations all agreed that they will have a rotation system, and the next governing body's mandatory defence is not the IBF. In fact, it's the WBA, so that's got a priority.
Also as well, Frank, can you please explain
what's good, family? It's your man the YB back once again. Big shout out to your man the YB, number one sugar mama in the game right now, Lizzie for Corinne, for coming through and boosting the coin up. Wow, I'm shocked. Now, you man might not understand the significance of what we've just heard there, so I'm going to explain it to you. Again, Joyce whooped on Joe Parker back in September. And at that time, I went on a little kind of, I'm not sure what you'd call it, a campaign trying to spread awareness that Joyce needs to put himself out there and get the WBO to order his mandatory immediately. Yeah? Bear in mind, OIB, the WBO, Usyk fought AJ. That was on the WBA ordering. But the initial ordering, the rematch clause, has nothing to do with anything. The original order was back in 2021. October 2021, or whenever it was, whenever AJ fought Usyk the first time, that's when the WBO's mandatory was fulfilled. Joyce beat Joe Parker a year later, meaning the WBA mandatory was open again. And bear in mind, Joyce had been shafted back in February 2021. Many people don't understand this. Joyce was ordered to fight Usyk before the AJ fight. And Joyce's team dropped the ball and did nothing. They didn't get any step aside and they didn't get a Usyk fight. Joyce versus Usyk was supposed to be the final eliminator for the AJ fight. And rightfully so. That should have been took place, truth be known. What did Usyk really do? What, beat Chaz Lee? Since when is beating Chaz Lee and Chisora a heavyweight mandatory shot? Fight Joyce. But again, Joyce really got no one to blame but himself. He allowed his team to let it fizzle out. I've been saying Joyce is the most deserving heavyweight contender probably in the history of the game, truth be known. No one, I don't know, certainly in the last 20 years, no contender has stopped someone like Daniel Dubois, and no contender has stopped someone like Joe Parker before getting to a world championship shot. Show me a world championship level contender in any weight division who's more deserving than that. Oops. Devin Haney, he's undisputed champion. I love what he's doing, but he ain't stopped someone like Daniel Dubois and stopped someone like Joe Parker, for example. Most people, Billy Joe, for example, he got 10 million different world championship titles and never beat no one. Do you know what I'm saying? So Joe Joyce is the most deserving heavyweight contender in history. And yet, his team, and really, I've been communicating with Joe to a small extent. And he told me, back in September, I was going hard. I was begging people, if you know Joe Joyce, get in this video. Because the WBO has a grievance process. You can obviously send them an email or whatever it is, a grievance process. You say, listen, I want my WBO shot. You shafted me in February 2021 and you lay your case out. Same as what Dillian White did. And I said, Joe, don't wait until it's too late. Do it now. Before everyone else gets their hook in. 2-2s. Joe Joyce told me, there's no problem. My team's got it. Next thing we know, it's now December. Joe Joyce has been sitting around for 3 months here. And what do we know has happened? Now, you've got the IBF. They went first in November. Ordering Hrgovic. And now you got Daniel Dubois ordered. Oops. Which means Joe Joyce categorically now, he could have been the one to put his claim in the first. He could have been the first person to put his claim in. But his team, I don't know, it's mad. His team just sat around. And he was telling me, Frank's got it under control. And what gets me is, you've just heard there Frank Warren say, yeah, Daniel Dubois next. Daniel Dubois next up because which actually is true. And in fact, I said this in September. I said, if Joe Joyce don't do anything, Dubois is going to get next. Because of the belt system, i.e. the WBO was the last called defence, which was Usyk. The holder of the WBA, IBF and WBO haven't fought anyone, or the WBA and the IBF have not had defences. Usyk was the WBO, so WBO's at the back of the list. Now Joe Joyce had a chance. He could have come in hot in September and put his foot in there, get in the grill and try to get something. It might not have worked, but at least try. At least put your grievance forward with the WBO. If they then tell you, sorry, we're not going to order it. Remember, mandatories are served every year. So whilst Usyk was the first one, whilst the WBO's been satisfied, it had still been a year since Usyk had fought a mandatory. Fighting AJ in a rematch has nothing to do with the WBO mandatory status. So Joe was well within his right to say, okay, the WBO was served in 2021. It's now been a year later. I want my mandatory shot now. He told me, sit back, YB. You know, I got Frank Warren on the case. And I said in the video, you man will know I said this. You can go back and watch it. I said, if you don't do anything, Dubois is going to get next. Because I've been sceptical of Frank Warren for a long time. The way he's been doing things, like putting Daniel Dubois. Why is Daniel Dubois getting the WBA shot for? Joe Joyce popped his cherry. Do you know what I'm saying? I don't rate that. I believe in meritocracy. If you pop someone's cherry, you should be I don't care how old you are. Obviously, Frank Warren's thinking, wait there a minute. Daniel Dubois is 20 years old. I can milk him for the next 15, 20 years. Joe Joyce is kind of old. I understand from a business point of view why Frank Warren's doing what he's doing. And that's why Joe Joyce is supposed to have his own team. But Joe Joyce's own team is more focused on sucking Frank Warren off, bottom line. And I said that back in September. I said, Joe, if you could allow your team to sit around jerking themselves off rather than handling your business, you're going to end up at the back of the queue. And you're not going to get a fight until 2024. And that's how it's looking right now. Because it's looking like Hrgovic's going to get next. Dubois is going to get first, then Hrgovic, and then Joyce. And we know what Tyson Fury is like. Yeah, I mean, you know what I'm saying? And what gets me is, I mean, I could go and find it. I might do a video on it going forward. But people who remember, guess what happened? After Joe Joyce beat Joe Parker, yeah, Frank Warren was on TalkSport with Joe Joyce. Yeah, Joe's up. In fact, you know what? I'm going to have to find it right now. Frank Warren, Joe Joyce, TalkSport. Because Frank Warren was all in the video on TalkSport saying exactly what he's saying now about Daniel Dubois, but about Joe Joyce. Joe's got next. No matter what happens, Joe Joyce is going to have next. Super annoying. I can't bother to find it. It'll be September 2022.
One of the big.
Be like that.
That's what I was going to say.
a full-on day.
But that's what your life is like now, right?
I love the Raiders,
We
yeah.
can't talk about that.
Forced to stop it, forced to not. Beep, beep, beep. It's like, Olympics, etc. I got more
But where is he? What time do you come in?
exactly.
to knock him out, but he was still. Ref's gonna have a listen to.
Anyway, I can't find it. I have to do it. I should have really prepared myself better. But end of the day, man, you man have seen it. If you watch my videos, you'll know what the case is. The case was Frank Warren was all in the video on TalkSport saying, "Yeah, Joe's next. Don't worry, Joe. Got you back, Joe." And I said, "Listen, Joe, don't take anything someone's. Watch what people do." And what Frank Warren's been doing is setting Daniel Dubois up nicely. And you've been getting punked again. YB, how has Frank Warren been punking Joe Joyce? Well, Joe Joyce popped Daniel Dubois' cherry in December 2020. 2 years ago. What's he done since? That victory over Daniel Dubois was a world championship contender victory back then. Yeah? Joe Joyce and his team and Frank Warren then allowed Usyk off the hook. Joe Joyce, 3 months after Joe Joyce beat Dubois, and this was ordered. The WBO ordered, not talked about, not pontificate. They ordered Joyce versus Usyk. How did your team let that slip through? And Usyk got off the hook by saying, Joe Joyce is small fry. We can't come to a deal because the only way Usyk's fighting Joe Joyce is if it's 95-5 split. Now, you know, the minute a team and everyone sucks off, that's why I don't like Usyk like that. People suck Usyk off here like he's some. People think he don't care about the money. He's not like that. Usyk's about the purity of the sport. The reason I don't really click with Usyk like that is because of what he said about Joe Joyce, which was, I'm only fighting Joe if it's 95-5 split. Now, a minute a fighter, starts talking about 95-5 splits, I know you're scared to death. Do you know what I'm saying? Because Usyk weren't talking about 95-5 when it came to Chisora. Yeah? He weren't talking about 95-5 when he's fighting AJ. But yet, come to Joe Joyce, you want to have 95-5. But again, I'm not blaming Team Usyk. Team Usyk best be ducking Joe Joyce. My beef is with Team Joyce. It's Team Joyce's responsibility not to let Usyk off the hook. You had an official WBO order in. How the fuck? And they allowed, without any step aside, normally in that situation, if the WBO's ordered Joyce versus Usyk, normally Joe Joyce will have to sign off on step aside for Usyk to then go and fight AJ. Joyce's team, no step aside, no nothing. They disappeared. Genuinely. And really, it's been 2 years basically. Joyce beat Dubois in December 2020. 2 years later, more or less, or 20 months later, he then beats Joe Parker. In 2 years, he's had 2 decent fights. Both really going to nowhere. Because how have they allowed one of the best prospects of all time to be sitting on the bench for 2 years? But Joe Joyce, he seems to me, I don't know what his team be doing. I think his team are inside men. I think Adam Morley stays sucking off Frank Warren. I think Adam Morley is an inside man for Frank Warren. And Frank Warren tells him, "Listen, Adam, I got you nice. Yeah, I'm going to give you a 5% cutting on Dubois." I think there's something fishy going on. I can't explain it. I can't explain. As a manager, Adam Morley's job is to manage, or his concern is solely about Joe Joyce. But yet, he let Usyk off the hook. And Sam Jones, big mouth, giving all this, he let Usyk off the hook. He's had Joe Joyce on the sitting around for 2 years. And again, what gets me is Joe Joyce knew this. He's seen my message. And I'm not saying I'm the big I am, but I said this in September. I said, you've got to get on it. You've got to go for I sent the links, to the WBO grievance process. You've got to get on the WBO and put forward your case for being ordered for mandatory now. Because if you sit around, it's going to be Dubois and it's going to be Hrgovic before you. No, I'm going to... That's what he said. Swear down. That's what he said. Calm down, mate, he said. He emailed me, he messaged me back on Instagram. Calm down, mate. Calm down. And that's what frustrates me is, why am I more concerned about your career than you are? How am I more concerned, about wanting the best for you than your own team are? About calm down. And guess what? Where has calming down got you? Calming down has got you to the back of the queue. And go back and watch the video. September, I said, the way things are looking, Joe Joyce will get a world championship shot in 2024. The middle of 2024. And that's what it's looking like right now. Joe Joyce's best hope is for the belts to be split up. In fact, Joe Joyce's only hope is for the belts to be split up. If the belts aren't split up, he's going to be fighting random ass fights like Christine Hammer for the next 3 years, 2 years. That's a fact. Or taking these random, difficult nobody fights like Joe Parker. With all due respect, yeah, Joe Parker was Joe Joyce's meal ticket. And I guess the thing is, from Joe Joyce's point of view, he's probably thinking, well, I made $1 million or $2 million against Parker. So yeah, and that's probably what it is. Problem is, you see, world champion belts aren't necessary to make good money. And I'm happy for Joe. I'm glad Joe's making all the money he can. I'm just frustrated that he's the most deserving, and yet he's being done this way. Daniel Dubois has done nothing to deserve next. What the fuck? You just got... Oh, I don't care about your knee, yeah? You just got dragged by a cruiserweight. Nearly got knocked out by a cruiserweight. If that cruiserweight had any noddle about him, Daniel Dubois would have lost in a KO in the first round or the second round. Facts. That's a fact. With all due respect, fair play, Dubois came through it, yeah, but he was as good as finished. I don't care what no one says. Any half decent guy, he'd have been out of there. So Dubois has a loss against Joe Joyce, goes life and death with some random top million dude, and he's up next. Nah, that don't work. But yet, here we are. And even Hrgović has done more than Daniel Dubois. At least he's undefeated. And at least, well, and even Hrgović, to be honest, he got beat by Zhang, that's a fact. So, the two most undeserving dudes going, Dubois and Hrgović, have done nothing to deserve next. They haven't. Joe Joyce, stop Parker, stop Dubois. That's as good as it gets. Your man, Hrgović went life and death with Zhang and lost. Never mind, stop the guy. Joe Joyce is stopping these contenders. For all we know, Joe Joyce here would stop Hrgović. Hrgović here would run out of gas after 5 rounds, and Joe Joyce will be having a go on him. That's what I think would happen. Big facts. Joe Joyce would have a go. Joe Joyce would take turns on Hrgović. Hrgović run out of gas, and it's a wrap for you. You run out of gas against Joyce, it's over for you. He don't punch hard enough to get Joyce out of there. It's just 100%. Joe Joyce is the hype job contender slayer. That's what he does. And yet he's being treated this way because of his age. And I wouldn't mind, I understand what Frank Warren's doing, yeah, but Frank Warren came out and said on TalkSport, we're going to make sure Joe gets going, he's not getting any younger. And I think, again, Frank Warren, I think part of his strategy, yeah, is built in. Frank Warren knows Fury will have a go on Daniel Dubois. I think part of the strategy is they want to try and age out Joe Joyce. Frank Warren does not want to put Joe Joyce in there with Tyson Fury right now. Yeah, I don't think Frank Warren wants that one. I think Frank Warren's thinking, okay, let's get Tyson Fury beats Usyk. Fury can then have a go on Dubois, have a go on Hrgović, and by then Joe Joyce is going to be 60 years old. And, you know, that's what I think going on here. I think there's a broader plan going on. It seems odd, the way how fake Frank Warren was. Yeah, Joe Joyce is next, apples and pears. And here we are. And I said to Joe back in September, Joe, here's a good case. You need to drop Frank Warren. Leave Frank Warren and go and work with Eddie Hearn. Not because Eddie Hearn's any better than Frank Warren, but because Eddie Hearn's desperate to get back on the scene. And here, look what Eddie Hearn's doing with Hrgović. He's pushing away to get in there. That's what you want. You want someone on your team working for you. And Eddie Hearn is washed right now. He'd love someone like Joe Joyce to work with, who's top quality stock, who can really beat Tyson Fury. He'd love that. Joe Joyce really is the new AJ. I'm going to be honest now. Joe Joyce is the new real AJ. A man who actually has a chance of beating Tyson Fury. AJ has no chance. He's a fake one. No good. No heart. Yeah? That's what Joe Joyce should be doing right now. Frank Warren, Joe, has give you nothing to work with. What's he give you? He didn't even really get the Joe Parker fight. Even that nearly didn't happen. For 2 years, you've been on the sideline doing nothing. And you're 38 years old. How's that possible? And your team are useless. Adam Morley is useless. And if I'm wrong, show me what value is added. Go on. Where's the value? Who couldn't have got you a Joe Parker fight in 2 years? You beat Dubois, and it took you 2 years to get a Joe Parker fight. What the fuck? Who are these guys? Who are they? And then Joe told me, he goes, well, no, YB, I kid you not, word for word, Joe Joyce said, YB, you're wrong. No, basically, I said to him, Joe, if you don't do something, you're going to be fighting for a belt in 2 years. Joe came back and said, not if Fury decides to fight me. I said, what the, are you joking? So you think because Tyson Fury, I think what Joe's getting at is, oh well, and what about after the Chisora fight, and he said he'll fight me next. You joking? Number one, even if Fury wanted to fight you next, if a WBA and WB and the IBF have been ordered, there's nothing Fury can do apart from drop the belts. Who here thinks, Fury, who at that point will be undisputed, who here thinks an undisputed Fury is going to drop belts to fight Joyce? Come on now. He ain't dropping the belts to fight you. No way. I'm not even sure Fury will fight you if he's ordered to fight. There's more chance of Fury dropping a belt to avoid fighting Joyce than there is of him dropping belts to fight him. I've never heard of that, full stop. Tell me a time a champion has dropped belts to fight someone. Never happened. People don't drop belts to fight people. And even if Fury didn't have to drop belts, even if Fury had no mandatories, it wasn't Dubois, it wasn't Hrgovic. Oh well, not if Fury chooses to fight me. Even that's wrong. Because he ain't going to choose to fight. So wait a minute, you want to base your whole career on what Fury may or may not choose to do? Have you not seen that? All due respect, Fury's career is the last career I'd want to base on my career. Oh well, but YB, Tyson Fury may or may not choose to fight me. Are you joking? Is that what your team are going on? Oh YB, don't worry. Fury may wake up in the morning on Tuesday and put his shoes on the right way and pick me up. The fuck? Your team's job, and I said it as well, I said, listen, you don't get, in life, in business, you don't get what you want. You get what you negotiate. You get what is in writing. You get what's been ordered. And peep this. Frank Warren had no problem setting up the whole Dubois thing. Wait a minute. Why is it Frank Warren was able to get WBA ordered? Eddie Hearn able to get Hrgovic ordered? But yet you, who was ready in September, why wasn't Frank Warren on the phone? I said it at the time. I said, Frank Warren, if your team really care about you, Joe, they'll be on the blower to the WBO immediately in September, pushing for the ordering. Frank Warren got WBA ordered nicely. Eddie Hearn got the IBF ordered nicely. And yet you, who was months before this, Hrgovic is November. What's your team been doing? What's your team been doing for the last 3 months, Joe? What have they been doing? Because they haven't been pushing to get you WBO ordered, and now you're back at the queue. And I said at the time, Joe, you need to bring someone in who's going to be genuine on your case. And I said at the time, it sounds silly, people are like, I said, listen, back in September, I said, listen, bring me in and I'll stay on your team and see what they're doing. Because I don't, what are they doing? What in the last 3 months, your team have had 3 months to add value. What have they got in store for you? These are the questions you must be asking your team. Team, I'm paying you big bucks, 10, 20% of $1 million paydays. If you're making that money, what value are you delivering back to me? What have you got in store? Now, there's one of two things must be the case. Number one, if your team come back and say, well, Joe, we don't have the WBO ordered, but here's a draft sheet of Joyce versus Deontay Wilder. Yeah, if your team have got a big fight in store, not we can do this. If your team have a draft contract and, do you know what I mean? If they've been working on things that look pretty likely, like a big fight, it's not ideal, but fair play. That's one of two things must be happening. Number one, they're on the blower to the WBO, or number two, they've got a huge fight in the line. I don't want to hear about. I heard someone say, I think even Frank Warren said, maybe Joyce versus Chisora. What the fuck? I swear, if I hear about that, I'm going to go mad. If I hear about Joyce and Chisora, I'm going mad. I'm going mad. The best heavyweight contender prospect. Chisora? No. That's a no for me. Joyce, if it's not a Wilder, Ruiz, them kind of guys. I don't want to hear about Wallin. That don't do it for me. I'm sorry, don't. Wallin's a step back from from Parker, sorry. That's what your team... It's been 3 months. I was here in September saying the same things. What have your team been doing for the last 2 years? It took your team 2 years to lose a Usyk fight. In 2 years, you beat Dubois, lost a Usyk fight, didn't get any step-aside money, and it took you 2 years to fight Joe Parker. What's your team doing all day, Joe? Because you're paying them 100 grand, 200 grand, no doubt, 10, 20% of your purses. What are they delivering for you? What are they doing all day? I don't understand that. If I was managing Joe, immediately after the Joe Parker fight, we'd have been onto the WBO, pushing for some sort of resolution. Yeah? You shafted us out of our USIC mandatory back in February 2021. We want some recompense. We want our WBO shot ordered today. That's for the kind of conversations that should have been going down. And if you can't get it, you can't get it. You ain't lost nothing. But your team weren't doing that. Oh, you're telling me calm down. And that's what makes you think you're happy just to mill about and fight. That's what, bottom line, yeah. The way Joyce carries on, I think he's happy just fighting these random washy-washy fights. I think that's what it is. He can't be that bothered. He's happy, fight Chisora next. Fucking hell, who wants that? No one wants that. No one wants that. But you must want it, because that's what you seem to be happy. Joyce seems to be happy, yeah. Fighting once every 6 years. And then fighting Christian Hammer and Chisora and all these random ass. Yeah, that's what he must like doing. Because for the last 2 years, that's what he's done. He fought Dubois, he fought Hammer, he fought another random dude, and then he fought Parker. That's how your career's been going, and that's how it will continue going, based on the evidence we have today. So, Frank Warren has shafted Joyce, but really, Joe got no one to blame but himself. It's one thing, yeah, if you don't know. Oh, I'm naive, I didn't know YB, but you did know, because I told you what was going to happen in September. And now we're here. Dubois up next. Frank Warren, who is telling you, yeah, no matter what happens. And that's what, Frank Warren's a snidey individual, because how can a man say, yeah, no matter what happens, Joyce is next, and then he's got Dubois, and he's in a few months later, oh, well, how the system works is Dubois has definitely got next. What? In September you were saying it was Joyce. Make your mind up. But it shows you where his priorities lie, and you can't blame Frank Warren. Blame your team, Joe. What are your team doing to earn their keep? What value, over the last 3 years, what value have they added? Because you've done your part, and that's what hurts me and frustrates me, is the fact that there's so many bums in the game today, yeah, who don't do anything and get things they don't deserve, like World Championship shots, like belts, etc, etc. Then there's people like Joyce, he does the work, he's in there smoking Dubois, who everyone thought he'd get whooped by. Everyone thought Dubois was going to, Frank Warren included, thought Dubois will punch a hole through Joyce. Yeah, that's a fact. Joyce goes in there, does his job to the highest level degree, goes in there, washes Joe Parker, does his job, which is something we can rarely say about athletes today at all. And what does he get in return? On the shelf for 2 years. But again, at the end of the day, man, Joe, you got to take responsibility for your own life and your own career. Yeah? If you don't want to bring someone in who cares and who going to keep people in check, then what you can do? Because Sam Jones, you give it all this, but what's he really... Again, what value has he added? Yeah, where is it? What value? Because if I'm there, yeah, and I'm getting paid $200 grand a piece, you best be... Anyway, what are we doing here? I haven't seen no value added from Joyce's team. In fact, the people representing Joyce have taken him backwards. You didn't get no step aside. That's an easy play. WBO, wait there a minute, WBO. You ordered us to fight Usyk. You're now saying Usyk can fight AJ. We want step aside. Otherwise, we'll see you in court because we want this Usyk fight. Where was that? Nowhere. That's what that was. Nowhere. That's a value add. On to WBO after the Parker win to get the WBO ordered. That's a value add. Didn't do that. They ain't do nothing. And that's what I tell you. The people representing Joyce are inside men. Yeah, they're paid off by Frank Warren and they're all conspiring behind Joyce's back. But the problem is, Joe, at this point in time, you've got no one to blame but yourself. Because you're the man in control here. Yeah? No one else, I can't do it for you. If I could do it for you, I'd do it for you. But you have to be the one to say, start holding your own team responsible. Wait a minute, team. What am I paying you $200, 200 grand, however much money a year for, when a goober from the YouTube was telling you what was going to happen back in September? He'd been told you this one. What am I paying you for? Ask him. What have you done in the last 3 months? That's the question that needs to be asked. Joyce, if you do nothing else, yeah, ask your team, what have you done in the furtherance of my career in the last 3 months? Not the furtherance of Dubois' career, because we know what you've done for Dubois, That's quite clear to everyone what's happened for Dubois. We see how Eddie Hearn has furthered Hrgovic's career. What has Frank Warren and Adam Morley and Sam Jones, what have they done in the furtherance of Joe Joyce's career? We must hear that right now. I need to hear it 100%. Oh, well, we got you, we might have a Derek Chisora fight for you. Fuck you now. If that's what they got for you, then I don't know what to tell you. Yeah? If you're happy with that, then you're happy with that. Shocking. Anyway, smash the like button, subscribe, let off the bell 100%.